This map here is an infrared map that uses red to showcase vegetation. And so what we see here is over time we're going to look at kind of the change to this area. But the yellow line, the purpose of that's pretty much the main roads that we find in this particular area here. So it's not a vast area, it's not massive, but still these roads here are very critical to understanding deforestation here. And one of the things you'll notice just in that 10 to 11 years, how these deforestation has removed, in particular, almost particular patterns here, these straight lines. And so what they'd essentially do is they just continue to log, and they'd use these main networks to then move the logs to somewhere else where they can be turned into something. And so here's the removal of species here in the Amazon rainforest in terms of deforestation. And so you can see how it happens in particular order that continues to build out. And so it's these long linear appendages that come off of the main highways. Here's a more recent image, but also showcases the change that we've seen here. And so here's 1999. And then we filter in, now we'll see the 2009, we can see the change over time. And so it's very much that similar pattern that we saw there. And so what's going on here is this demand for resources from this particular area. And so we go back to the whole idea of population, affluence, when we go back to that whole I equals P times A times T formula. So now what's going on? Why? Why is this occurring? So first off, a very simple reason would be this timber. So using this for paper products. So I've said this before, but much of Southeast Asia provides paper that we use here in the United States, and so that kind of showcases the global economy. But we obviously have plenty of forest areas, in the United States. Why are we not using our paper? But that demand for timber, also in terms of for biomass, for using timber as a heating source. As a cooking source. And so that's something that we've been doing for as long as humans been around. But anyway, and so the scale of population then plays a key role in that. Further, pasture and farming, and so converting these areas to farms. And so when it's a dense tropical rainforest, it doesn't have much use. But if you remove that, you can then turn it into ag, or you can turn it into places for cattle to graze. And so we'll look at in a minute the role of the Brazilian steak industry, for example. Now, how does this occur? A lot of times they use a particular technique in, let's say, lower income countries or more rural areas that are a little bit more impoverished. They use a technique called slash and burn. So instead of having a big old caterpillar tractor come through and just remove all the trees, what they do is they use a kind of a slow process where they slash everything, they cut all the everything down, and then burn it, kind of a controlled burn. So we'll look at an image of the result of slash and burn agriculture. Further, the type of soils we find here are what we call detritus soils. And so it's a very, very thick O layer, so a very, very thick top layer of the soil. But one of the things, if you just move that, if you adjust it, if you just kind of move the dirt around, essentially it renders it useless. So detritus soils are fairly fragile O layer of the soil. And so one of the things is a lot of times, because we're not using the most sustainable techniques, a lot of times intense farming will actually overuse the area and render it useless over time. Another characteristic is something called shifting cultivation. So essentially, as you burn one forest area, and so you use an area, but then over time, it's not really, you've rendered it useless, you've ruined all the soil, you just simply move on to the next area. And so you kind of constantly are shifting your cultivation to new areas after essentially over-agriculturalizing previous areas. And so one of the things is Mother Nature very slowly makes that trek back to a tropical rainforest. Keep in mind how big those trees are and how long it takes for them to grow over time. And so it's a very slow process for Mother Nature to return after using these areas that have been, which you have shifting cultivation. And so going back to Brazilian steak, and so one of the things that we've talked about, I think before, is the fact that over time, Brazilian steaks become something that's in demand. People want it. It's something that's we see in downtown Indianapolis, this Fogo de Chao, these Brazilian steakhouses, and so people see this as an opportunity to make some income. So you have this land, let's convert it to something we can actually make some cash. So we're looking at kind of, once again, I equals P times A times T. We can see population, affluence, and technology playing key roles there. finally, there's now been a recent rush for biofuels, and so we see ethanol and sugarcane, for example. You can actually now use that for fuel for cars, for tractors, to power transportation of various types. And so this is now also another aspect of how and why these areas are becoming, changing, why the demand for these areas and their resources are so high. Here you see the result of slash and burn, and so just clear this forest, burn it, then move on to the next area. So here we can see kind of the process of deforestation more at the ground level instead of looking at the aerial views of change over time.